honor to recognize another great Texan, my neighbor to the south, a gentleman from Texas, Mr. Conaway.
Well, thank the gentleman for yielding some time and allow me to add my inadequate words and thoughts for Chris and his family. I had purchased Chris's book a long time ago, but as things go, I just hadn't read it. And so after he was murdered a week or so ago, I read his book, and it was a very unsettling experience. The book is written in what appears to be Chris's voice. I never met Chris, and so I didn't know what he actually sounded like when he spoke. But the book is written in a very conversational tone, and it's almost like you're having a conversation with Chris, and you're reading, and you're caught up in the stories, and you're caught up in the action, and you go, oh, he was murdered several days ago. You know, Chris's style of talking about himself and the things that he did on behalf of this country were very self-deprecating, very matter-of-fact. I'm sure most of the instances in there where he talked about coming close to being hurt or coming close to near-death experiences are sugar-coated from what the real deal was, because I know he didn't want his wife and family and many to know it. He was certainly wouldn't have been bragging about that anyway. But Chris had a very matter-of-fact tone when he was with the SEALs, and he was in those battles. And even when he was home, he had a very not casual is the wrong word, but a very matter-of-fact attitude toward the opportunity he would get killed, that something bad would happen to him. And he also spoke in the book often about his faith and a guardian angel. That one instance where he just moved differently than he would have normally moved, and a bullet went right where he had been. And it's, and that's a Holy Spirit kind of thing. That just wasn't Chris's time. And so you read through that book, but Chris has been taken from us. He's been murdered, and America has lost one of her very, very best to have worn our colors and to have served. And I think the thing that comes out in the story in the book that he and his wife struggled, that was the most impressive about it, was how torn he was between duty to country and duty to family. He was clear his first duty was to God, but he was legitimately torn between the responsibilities to not only himself but his men and the others under his watch care, and those he protected by killing bad guys before they had a chance to kill our guys. And that role that he played, he relished it, he cherished it, he wanted to do it, but he also began to see the impact it was having on his wife and kids. And so the struggle he went through, and he and Talia went through, trying to come to the decision: do I give up something that I really love to do, and I feel like my duty to do it, and that I will have abandoned my friends if I go a different direction? How difficult that decision was for he and his family, but that he ultimately decided that his role, God's direction for him, was that he'd be a full-time father to his two kids and a full-time husband to his wife, in the sense of loss and that from leaving the service, leaving the SEALs, and now, truth of the matter is, he was in a period of our country's history when not likely to be repeated ever again, and certainly hope not. But the way he spoke about the opportunity to lay his life down for others is very matter of fact, and that he was willing certainly to do that. I too, as Randy and Louis talked about families, they really are the unsung. I get a little taste of this back during when Iraq was going on in a big way in Afghanistan. I've made multiple trips, and my wife Suzanne is just a basket case while I'm in country, and they never take members of Congress any place scary. I mean, they're not going to do that, helicopter failure or something. But for the most part, they never take us anywhere scary. But she doesn't know that. I mean, I know it. I know everything's fine, and we're wearing suits and ties, and it's fine. But she doesn't until I get out of country. And as soon as she knew that, I could sense the relief in her. Well, that gives me a microscopic sense of what these families have done for 12 years now, across the board, that with their loved ones downrange. Because as far as the family's concerned, it's a 24-hour day, 7-day-a-week risk for their loved one. Now, the loved one knows when it's scary and when it's not, and knows when things are going crazy, but the family back home doesn't. They're dreading that phone call. They're not phone call. They're dreading that car pulling up out front because they know that loved one someplace where they could get hurt or killed. And strength of the American serviceman's and woman's family to support them throughout this time frame, where we've asked him as a country to do far more for this country than should ever have been asked of any one individual. And yes, it's an all-volunteer force, and yes, they continue to re-enlist and to re-up and go at it, but we've asked them to do more than we should have. They've recognized that we had to ask them to do these things, and so I too brag on the families because that really is where the strength of America is shown, in families being able to back Chris up and the things that he was trying to get to make sure he was able to do downrange all he needed to do without worrying about what was going on back home. It is so difficult to lose someone like Chris. We had there's a wonderful organization in Midland, Texas called Shore Support. A similar thing to what Chris was doing with his life after he got out, and that is this instance they take wounded vets on hunts, deer hunts, and they bring them into town and they have a big banquet and they take the wives on a shopping spree to the spa and then they take the guys to hunting. And this past year they were in the parade, leading from the parade, headed down to the banquet. And the float that they were on, that were several of them on, was hit by a train, and 4 of these men were killed. Men who had already had wounds of war that showed up in their lives every single day were killed. One was killed pushing his wife out of harm's way. So losing those 4, that the personal experience we think we feel with Chris, we don't, but we do because he's one of our best and one of those who's done far more for our country we should have asked, does feel personal. I ask folks around Memorial Day every year that we thank our country and we thank folks for the sacrifices made on behalf of our country, but it's generally in the generic, generally as a group. And what I ask people to do, I want you to pick out somebody specific. I want you to think about somebody who we're memorializing today, who have actually laid down their life in defense of this country. I want it to hurt a little bit. I want it to cost something for you to say the things we say very casually on Memorial Day. So I now have someone else that I can think about on Memorial Day when we all, as we should, as a country, recognize these collective sacrifices. But sometimes when you recognize them in the collective, it loses the impact. And so I would encourage folks to recognize those sacrifices in the specific by picking out somebody you went to high school that was killed in Vietnam, is my case, or someone that you know, family member, whatever, that you can say, all right, it ought to hurt just a little bit. I want to thank the gentleman for giving me a chance to add my, as I mentioned earlier, inadequate thoughts on Chris and his dedication to his country, his sacrifice, and wish Godspeed to his family as they cope with Chris's absence in this life. So thank you for that, and I yield back.
And I thank the gentleman